Hey everybody, this is automating Gemini or ChatGPT to generate or scrape data using Python and Chrome DevTools protocol. Now, a quick disclaimer: this is only done for solely done for education purposes to put out content on Chrome DevTools protocol and how to web scrape or how to extract or how to automate stuff with Chrome DevTools protocol. Now, the idea is if you want to automate stuff and let's say you can use ChatGPT, right? Something that you would manually, you could always automate it. And we'll be using Chrome DevTools protocol. And why use Chrome DevTools protocol at all, right? You could always go ahead and use Puppeteer, Playwright, or Selenium. The whole idea is we could use this with any language. And so if you're a C++ or JavaScript or Java developer, you can just kind of rewrite the entire code that I'll be writing. I'll be doing this in Python. So if you're a Java developer, you could always follow along and just write Java code because the concept just remains same. I'll be using a WebSocket library to send WebSocket messages. There won't be much library dependent stuff. So there you go, right? So if you're a Java developer, JavaScript developer, feel free to follow along in the language of your choice. What I will do now is show you a quick demo of what we're trying to do. So say I'm creating an application or I have a quiz application where I need to generate questions, random questions. And so earlier we would do this by doing web scraping or, doing some document analysis from a PDF. But what I'll do is try and generate these questions using ChatGPT or Gemini. I'll be using Gemini here. And so I'll run a script just to show you what's actually happening. And so the first step is to open a browser. So we'll see if that opens up. There you go. And we will be sending WebSocket messages to the browser. And so if you can see the first message here is to set the browser viewport. So we set that using the emulation. So set device metrics override method, and the params are just these. That's a width and height of 800. And so I've added enough sleep between each command just so it doesn't break or just so we don't get detected by a bot detection software. So yeah, we'll just wait for the next message to come in. So if you look at this, we have the next message, which is we have the IDS2 method is page.navigate, which means we want to open up a page in the current tab, and we pass the URL using the params attribute, params key, and there you go, right? I've opened Gemini there, and you can see Gemini has been opened up. So the next step is to send a message, which is basically to input a text, and so we'll just wait for that message to come in. So if you can see in the terminal there, we have our next message. We do not have, if you look at this, there's ID 5. It doesn't really matter what ID you give. And so if you look at the method, it's input.insert text, which means we're passing in the text, passing some text to the element that's focused currently. And we can pass in the text as in params and text. So with the prompt for us in this case is generate me a computer science multiple choice question for options and only one correct. It can be from any domain of computer science, right? So if you look at this, it actually pasted that text in there, and we're waiting, or our next step is to actually click that button. So we just send that message in a couple seconds. There you go. If you look at the next, we're actually using that a JavaScript command. So it's the document query selector button, select send message and dot click. Very basic stuff. If you're a JavaScript developer, you must know this. And oh, we've been signed out. But if you look at this, we have our question generated in the background. So let's see if you're actually able to get the page HTML, and we'll just wait for that to happen. So if the HTML has been actually generated, when we try and fetch the HTML content, if it's in there, we should be able to see it. So you can see our next message, which is to fetch the dom.get document, which will try and get us the node ID, but then the default node ID for most pages is just 3. So we'll just try and fetch that using the ID 3. So that'll happen in a couple of seconds. Okay, so if you look at this, we've tried the method dom.getOurHTML, and then we'll try and fetch the HTML page. So we'll see what happens. So this has exited. So we'll see if we have the page HTML. So we'll see if we have received that generate. We will see. We'll just search for a prompt. So if you look at the Gemini page here, so generate me a computer science question. That was our prompt. We just try to generate a computer science. Oh, we don't have that. Just do computer science. There you go, right? So I think we have generate a computer science multiple choice question. Blah blah blah. Let's see if we have the solution to it. There you go, right? If you look at this, how about we just open up this in VS Code? So let's say code, page content.html, just so we can format it. I will say, we'll say format document. It's a pretty huge HTML file. Okay, so if I say search for generate me a computer science question and try and look for the solutions it generated, I think one of them was to, there you go, right? So we have the actual answers here. So it's inside Markdown main panel. If we can just use beautiful soup to pass this out, and so that's essentially it, right? So this is what we will be doing. So with just very few lines of code, we will try and get the page content by asking ChatGPT a prompt, and so maybe you could save a couple bucks. Okay, so we will try and implement this. So I have my repository here. I will start by creating a virtual environment. So I'll say virtual env space env activated using source env slash bin slash activate. I will create the I will install the required library. So I'm going to say request module to send HTTP request and WebSockets to send WebSocket request to the browser. So I will install that, and I will save that to a request requirements.txt file. So I'm going to say pip freeze, which will show me the installed packages, and say requirements.txt. And there we have that. And what I will do now is say when scraper.py, create a script and import do the very basic imports, right? So I need to send requests. So I'm going to say import request, and I need to do some sleeps in between my requests. So I'm going to say from time import sleep, and let's say I need the JSON module. So I'm going to say import JSON. And do I need the OS module? Maybe, right? So I need to actually create the browser instance. So I need the subprocess module. So subprocess. And before we start coding, right, let me just try and summarize what we are trying to do. So we need a browser instance to automate it. So we'll say create a browser instance using a subprocess, or let's say as a process. Oopsie. As a subprocess, we will get the WebSocket URL of the browser instance. We will load the scraper steps from a JSON file. We will run or send each message to the browser instance, and this is how it's going to go, right? So essentially that's all we need to do. So at the end, the idea is, parse the HTML content and let's say save it to a file, right? To a file. So this is essentially what we need to do. So I will start by saying we need to create a subprocess instance. I'm going to say browser instance equals subprocess.popen, and we need to pass in the required command to create a browser. So what I'll do is it's actually available on my website. The link to this blog post will be in the description. So you can just copy this and I'll tell you what you need to do. So if I do this, you can paste that there. Just need to remove this, and there you go. So this is the Google Chrome executable. So I'm on Linux system. For me, this is Google Chrome. If you're on Mac, it might be slightly different. The way you want to check is you want to open a new tab and search for Chrome colon / version. It will show you the executable path, and so you kind of know what's the command to kind of create a browser instance. So if you're on Windows, you just want to Google, or you just do Chrome colon / version, and then these are the additional commands. Remote debugging port equals 9222, which means we want to keep the WebSocket protocol open on 9222. No first run. These are a couple of flags to kind of avoid the initial, there are a couple of flags where you want to use, the statistics and stuff. So these kind of flags, avoid that. And then user data directory is browser data TMP. You can just keep it anything as you like. And this is to avoid using the default profile, right? So this is how we create a browser instance. Now, the moment we create a browser instance, we want to wait until the browser process has spun up. So we'll just sleep for, let's say, 5 seconds to make sure all the processes have completed. And now what I want to do is get the browser WebSocket URL, right? So what we will do is send a request to a URL. So we know http:/localhost port 9222 /json/list. So if you read the Chrome DevTools protocol, you'll be actually see this is the way to get the WebSocket URL. And I'll send a request using the request module. I'm going to say request.get URL equals URL. And I could say verify equals false, and let's say timeout equals 10 seconds. And I'll just print the response and see what we get. And so I will run this and see what's happening. So the DevTools protocol, so there you go. The response says is 200. We will try and print this. So the website, the browser instance has opened up. We'll just close that. And what we will do, we'll just close this off. And what we will do is try and print the JSON response. So if I do this, I'll just copy this and say .json, and we'll see what we have now. So we'll again open a browser instance, and we'll just hide that. We'll see, okay, this is the response that we have. And if you look at this, there's one parameter which we need is the WebSocket debugging URL. So we'll just copy that, and this is the URL that we need to interact with the browser instance. So I'll just turn the browser off, come back and say, this is the key that we need. I'll just put that here, and I'll say response JSON equals response.json, and I'll say, and I'll just take the first object because it returns a list, and response, I guess that's response.json, and I'll say the WebSocket, or let's say WS endpoint equals response JSON.get, and I'll just put in this key. And I will remove this line. So we'll try and print this one now, and we'll print this at the end. We'll see what we get. So we'll execute that again. So the browser has opened up. We'll just confirm it from here. And if you look at this, there you go. We have the browser endpoint, right? And what we will do now is send a request to the browser using this URL, and we will see what happens. So what we'll be doing next is to create the JSON file, containing all the steps that we need to do. So I'll create a JSON file. Let's say scraper steps.json, and I will do this. So here we have a list, and I will navigate to my website now and try and pick that up. So if you go to this URL, you should be able to see these, and we'll just copy these, right? So essentially what this means is if I want to navigate to a page, I use this command, then we'll just do that. So if I do this, we'll just remove those just to make that valid and say the URL that we want to go to is Gemini. So I'm going to go there. So get this URL. Cool. And I will do that. And so the next command I want to do is, if you look at this, let's say we want to type some text, right? So if okay, I don't have that there, I'll be updating that. We'll just fetch that from the Chrome DevTools protocol, right? So let's say Chrome DevTools protocol. So we'll just create a dummy message. And so we'll just change the method. We'll just give the ID as 1 for this one, and that's 2, and this is not this. We'll just remove that too. We will find that from here. So we'll say insert text. There you go. That's what we're looking for. So input.insert text. I'll just type that. You can see parameters of string, not URL, so sorry, text. And then I'll say generate me a multiple choice question using Chrome DevTools protocol. So sorry, multiple choice question in the field of computer science. Let's say it should have 4 options and only one correct answer. So that's my prompt. And then the next thing I need to do is to make a button click. So I'll give the ID as 3, and then let's see, let's just find that in the blog post so you don't have to kind of do that every time again. And so that's what we need to do. We'll just copy this and runtime.evaluate. Instead of doing this, we need to click and not text areas. How do I find that? I'll just go to Gemini. We will go to the inspect panel. We will take a look at this button here, and let's see. So we should have a button saying blah 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 blah. Let's see what we can try and use to click that. So go button, that's ng content class button base send button. So we have a send dash button here. We'll try and get that. So if I say document dot query selector, and we'll have button class equals, we'll do this in double quotes, and class equals send button. Let's see, that's no. So let's see what's the problem. That's button send dash button. That's the class. We'll use the area label, right? We'll try and get that send space message. So we're going to say, so class will say, what was that? We'll do, if you'll take a look at this, that's this one, that's a div. This is the button, so we'll go aria label, okay. So I will do that. Oops, button aria label equals send space button. Okay, so why isn't that happening? So we can take a look at that. So if we look at this, send message, okay, not send button. So that's okay. There you go, right? So now we're able to find the button. So if I did dots click, it should kind of click that button, right? So there you go, right? So this is what we will do. We will copy this message and come back to our terminal. We will paste that there, and let me just turn that off for now. Now we need to escape these double quotes. So we'll say backslash, and I will put in a backslash here so that we escape that. And we'll just keep it here. Right? Now, to get the HTML page, you can just refer to these, and let's see, you can just copy paste these. For now, we'll just keep it, right? So, because I've already shown the demo and we know it works. So essentially, we'll just do this, right? So we don't have to wait a long time to see the results. So we just have three steps here. We'll send in the page.navigate. We'll paste some text, click the submit button, and that's all we'll do. So we'll come back, we will load the steps. So we'll say scraper steps equals an empty list, okay, with open dot slash scraper steps, and in read mode as f, we'll do scraper steps equals just son dot load of f, and we should be able to get that. We'll remove this off and say for step in scraper steps, I will, okay, before that I need to create a WebSocket client. So if we go ahead and find that using Python WebSockets lib, okay, we're using the WebSockets library. We will use the synchronous one. So let's see, we have getting started. Let's see if we can find some very how-to guides. I just need a bare minimum example to get started. So we can say server, and we need the client. Okay, so we'll use this code. So we'll use synchronous mode, so we don't have to kind of write an async function for this. And I will import this from async io.client. I think it's sync, and I can get the client connect, and so I will say with connect of ws endpoint, and then let's say max size, if I'm not wrong, equals none as ws, and I will do this, intend that. Okay, for each step in step, I need to send the JSON. So I'm gonna say JSON payload. I'm gonna say MSG message equals JSON.dumps of step, and then I'll say, what do I need to say? I need to send the message. I'm gonna say ws.send, and I'll say MSG. And what I'll do is I'll have a while loop to kind of wait until I'll just sleep for 10 seconds, right? That's what I'll do. I'll just sleep for 10 seconds, and there you go. And what should I do? So I'll just at the end I'll just sleep for 5 seconds too. I think this is more than enough, right? So we'll see what will happen now. So if what we're doing is creating a browser instance, sending a request to get the browser endpoint, get the parsing the response, connecting to a WebSocket URL, WebSocket creating a client, and then for each scraper step inside the file, we're running it for 10. We're running it, sending in the message, and sleeping for 10 seconds. You could, get the response using, response, or let's say WebSocket response equals ws.recv, and then kind of, let's say, could always print it also. So we'll just run and see what happens. So we open Gemini. So we pasted the text. We'll wait, we're sending in the request, and then we'll get the response. We could just parse the HTML by sending this request in here, which is, not trigger a mouse. Let's find that. Okay, I need to add that in the blog post too. Before I upload, I'll be putting in that too, which is basically two requests. I can actually show you that. So if I go to this, I can show you that in Chrome DevTools for code. So that's inside page. So if I look at page, our HTML, let's see, I think it's a DOM, or there you go. So it's inside DOM. So get our HTML. You can just pass in the node ID, so the root node ID. So mostly what I've observed is the root node ID comes to be the value 3. So you can just pass that and get the node HTML, and then kind of get the result. Just pass the HTML using Beautiful Soup or any other package, and there you go, right? You have data generated. And this is all. I'll be updating the blog post, so you can just copy the required commands from here. You could always make this very, kind of functionalized, and add more commands in the JSON file, and that's it, right? So you can always do this with any programming language. You do not have to stick to Playwright using Python and JavaScript, or Selenium using Java or Python. And that's it. Thank you for watching.